Hi, I'm Brett Jennings with Real Estate Experts, and welcome to our 2023 Winter Market Update and Forecast. As we start this conversation, what we want to do is take a look back at 2023, and what really set the stage for the market was what happened in 2022. As we all know, coming out of COVID, the Federal Reserve printed tons of money. Everybody got lots of checks, and we had all kinds of challenges with supply chain issues that caused inflation to go out of control. And what that ended up precipitating was the Federal Reserve had to make some aggressive moves in 2022 and significantly increased interest rates. In fact, the 30-year mortgage interest rate more than doubled in 2022. And in 2023, it wasn't much better. We started the year with about 6.5% interest rate, and rates climbed almost to 8% by the end of the third quarter. So what effect did was put a chilling effect on the real estate market. So much so that what we see in the numbers is that the number of homes that actually sold around the Bay Area in 2023 was down by 24%. What we knew for sure was that buyers could not afford those mortgage interest rates. So it made sense that we would see buyers not purchasing. But what we didn't fully anticipate was how much the move in interest rates would convince sellers to not put their homes on the market. In fact, this is looking at new listings in 2023, this is the last 5 years of new listings. The up and down you see in the curve is what we call our seasonal market, as more sellers put their homes on the market in spring and summer, and that inventory or new homes wind down near the end of the year. The far right side of the graph is 2023. And as you can see, we never really got that nice rise in inventory that we usually see in spring and summer months. So effectively, what that meant was the number of new homes for sale was down 25%. Now, with the number of homes sold down 24% and the number of new listings coming to market down 25%, you might think with a slowing year in real estate that prices would be down as well, but that's not actually what happened. The median price of homes sold around the Bay Area went up 6.9% in 2023. Why? Well, we simply had still more buyers than sellers. Although we had fewer sellers selling, we had fewer buyers, we still had more demand than supply. Now, where the slowdown did show up was the pace of the market. How long it took homes to sell, the market slowed down by about 10%. So effectively, where does that leave us at the end of the year? We're really looking at a balanced market in 2023 as we wind the year to a close. And that really shows up in what's happening with prices here at the end of the year. This is looking at home prices around the Bay Area going from 2018 all the way to 2023. And as you see on the far right side of the graph, the last couple months of the year here, prices are leveling off, again indicating that we're at somewhat of a balanced market. So where are things headed for 2024? Well, let's take a look. With all that's happening, we do have a large group of sellers that want to sell but simply can't. Why are those homeowners feeling stuck? Well, this graph tells the story. What it's telling us is that 70% of people who own a home have a mortgage interest rate of less than 4%. What that has caused is a large number of people to really reconsider or have second thoughts about selling. What we call it in the business is a lock-in effect. People are effectively locked in with these low interest rates, and they're really thinking twice about moving. In fact, if we look at this graph, the dark red are the people who have an interest rate of 3% or less, and they're absolutely not selling. I mean, you could put yourself in their shoes for a moment, or maybe you do have an interest rate that's in the 3%. When you're thinking about buying a new home and taking on a mortgage of 6, 7, or 8%, you're definitely not wanting to double your monthly payment. Now, the people who are in an interest rate in the cherry red between 3 and 4, they're probably not selling. The people who have an interest rate between 4 and 5% in the orange, they have to think hard before selling. Now, The people in the blue, if you have an interest rate between 5 and 6% and prevailing rates are 7%, well, moving from a home that has a 5% mortgage on it to buy a new home with the 6 or 7% mortgage, you're probably going to do that. And people who have a mortgage rate of over 6%, they're not thinking twice about moving. So this is effectively what's caused 25% fewer sellers to enter the market in the last year. Now, this lock-in effect has caused buyers and sellers to move to the sidelines. So effectively, we have a lot of pent-up demand. There are still a lot of people who want to move, and either they can't afford to, or they simply just can't bring themselves to paying that much more on a mortgage for a new home. So as soon as rates come down by any significant margin, we will see a surge in buying and selling. Now, what do rates need to come down to get buyers and sellers off the fence? That number is 6%. How do we know that? Well, the largest number of sales that occurred in 2023 were actually new construction. These home builders who had been buying land and building homes and had this finished product ready in 2023, they have to sell those homes. Whether interest rates are 7 or 8%, what they end up having to do is discount or buy down the mortgage to make the mortgage payments more affordable for those buyers. And when they started buying down those mortgage rates for those new home buyers buying the new construction homes, when those rates got to 6%, that's where we saw buyers come off the fence. So then let's look at what is up for mortgage rates in 2024. Well, what we know is, as I started this conversation with, was that the Federal Reserve increased interest rates because of inflation. And the graph you see here is showing what's happened with inflation going back to 2020. When we were in COVID, inflation was really, really low. But after we printed that money and we had supply chain issues, we saw inflation really, really get out of control. And by the second quarter of 2022, that inflation rate got to 8.3%. And that's when the Federal Reserve said, hey, we have to do something here. And they dramatically rose interest rates. Now, the good news is the Fed's policy of increasing interest rates has started to curb inflation. In fact, you can see the trend from Q3 2022, what's happened with inflation in this last year and a half. It has come down. And right now, in Q4, as we record this in 2023, the annualized inflation rate is down to 3.2%. So what does that mean with interest rates? Well, let's take a look at the same time horizon, what happened with interest rates. In 2020, rates were about 3.75%. In 2021, they went down even further to 2.65%. Now, if you bought a home or refinanced at that time, you've probably got a mortgage at 3% or under. In 2022, as we started the year, rates went to 3.2%. And this last year we saw the worst of it, with rates climbing as high as 8%. So what's ahead? What's forecasted for 2024? Well, because we're seeing inflation curbing substantially, the forecast is we will see rates drop down to 5.75. That's below that critical 6% number. And in 2025, in the year to follow, we might see rates go down as low as 5%. Now, if you're holding out for another period of time where you might think we would get a 3% interest rate, all the financial forecasters are saying we had rates artificially low and that we probably won't see rates come down to those 3s and 4s that we saw back in 2020 and 2021. Now, how does this decrease in interest rate affect transactions? Well, as you can see, in 2020, we had 5.6 million homes sell nationally. In 2021, that number grew to 6.1, and that was the busiest year in real estate on record. In 2022, when rates started to climb, the number of home sales went down. And in 2023, again, we saw the number of home sales drop 24%. But when we get rates below this critical 6% number, we are going to see an uptick or an uplift near 20% increase in the number of home sales. So what are the 5 factors, summing this all up, that are going to drive the market in 2024? Here's what we have. Number 1, rates will decrease as inflation comes down. Number 2 is the stock market will rise. When we see interest rates come down, companies borrow more money to grow their businesses, the economy expands, and the stock market rises. We also have an election year on the horizon, which usually is favorable for both interest rates and the stock market. Demand will increase as these interest rates come down, these buyers move off of the sidelines, as well as sellers will put their homes on the market. So supply will increase as more of these sellers lift. And lastly, what do we think is going to happen with prices? Well, we forecast that prices will rise 4 to 6% as demand will exceed supply. So that's our forecast for what's going to be happening and driving the market in 2024. So what should you do? Well, keep your eye on the market, on the news for when interest rates drop below 6%, because that's when we will see the market take off. In fact, for buyers, it will feel like this, okay? So the best thing that you can do is get prepared. So the question we're often getting is, should we wait for rates to come down before we buy? And in order to answer that question, I want to explain to you what happens when interest rates go down. When rates go down, the monthly mortgage payment becomes more affordable, and that causes mortgage applications and buyers to come back in the market. Now, supply goes down because we have all of these buyers buying up all these houses. And that causes the third thing, which is prices will rise as the demand exceeds supply. Buyers compete and face multiple offers. So to answer that question of should we wait for rates to come down before we buy, I want to simply come back and ask you a question if you're considering buying. Would it be easier for you to buy now when there is more selection, less competition, and simply refinance to a lower rate in the spring when rates go down? Or would it be easier to wait for rates to drop and get in the market in the springtime when buyers are back, inventory is low, competition is fierce, and prices are rising? Well, that leads us to our tip with expert advice, and that would be to buy before the frenzy and then simply refinance when rates come down. Ultimately, you need to be prepared to win in this market. And what does that look like? First and foremost, get pre-approved. Your pre-approval will typically be good for 90 days. So if you're considering buying in 2024, the earlier that you get into the market, the better price you will get on your home. Again, if interest rates aren't exactly where you want them to be and they are trending down, it's going to be easier to get into that home and refinance than it is to try to get into the market once the market is at a fever pitch. The second thing you're going to want to do is, if you're a seller considering moving up, get your home ready for market. If you would like some guidance or tips on the things to do or not do in preparing your home for sale, reach out to us for a complimentary preparation or upgrades analysis, and we can tell you where you can quite literally get the biggest bang for your buck. We want to thank you for tuning in and joining us this winter market update and forecast. So please get back to the real estate expert that shared this recording with you. And until we talk again, this is Brett Jennings saying we'll be right here, ready to help you create a better life through real estate. Have a great one.